all over.
Sorry, did you say you're an interpreter?
Yeah, jeg var så jung, ni så jung, og køy så, og var på sig.
I'm not even gonna, you could be just saying anything.
No, this one's not daft. Yeah.
Any talk about lasers, and I'm not being flippant, but you were talking about science fiction. You were talking about like sort of laser guns.
And I go into UK factories and I'm like, they're not as advanced as this.
Well, hello and welcome to the latest episode of the About Small Business podcast. In this episode of the third series, I'm going to be speaking to Terance South of ISR Laser Cleaning Services. Terance, do you prefer Terance or Terry?
Either will do.
Either will do. Okay, Terry's a little bit easier, flows off the tongue. So Terry, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate you coming on.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And now we've met at a networking event.
Yes.
And your company's a laser cleaning company.
Yes.
And we've already off camera, we've said about the confusion that can cause some people. Can you just give us a quick overview of the services that ISR Laser Cleaning offer?
Well, ISR provide a laser cleaning service which takes over from what used to be shot blasting.
Right.
So if you look at, could we shot blast that? Yes. Well, we can do it with a laser. You know, the thing is, if we can see it, we can clean it. And the thing is about the laser cleaning, it's much more environmentally friendly. So you can now think, well, we could shot blast that, but it's indoors. Well, you can now do it indoors with a laser and an extraction system. And you can say, well, we've got to take that outside to shot blast it somewhere special, but we've got to take it all apart. You don't have to do that anymore. You can actually laser it in situ. So a lot of things sort of inside machines or inside factories that you want to clean, you can do them where they are instead of moving them outside and doing it with
the process in itself is presumably cleaner anyway.
It's cleaner, yes, because there's no medium involved. There's no shot, there's no soda, there's no ice, there's no medium. It's simply you're using light, and the only waste created is the waste that comes off the engine or the machine, wherever it might be, and that is captured with a big vacuum down into a filter, and then the filter's just processed. 9 times out of 10, what we try and do is go to somewhere and say to them, right, we come clean, we leave clean, we're not a waste management company, there's a clean filter gone in, this is a maintenance job, that's yours. Every time we come, we put that filter in the machine. When it's full, you dispose of it. So we try and work with people, and when they've got CSR accreditation or ESG accreditation, that helps them, because when you give away, well, you take the cleaning company will take your waste away. Yeah. But where does it go? Do you always get the certificate? Are they doing it correctly? Do they amalgamate it with somebody else's?
Are you finding that that's a big problem, like sort of companies that are...
No, it's not. They don't think about it. Right. You know, you are legally liable for where it goes.
Because I mean, certainly from a domestic perspective, what a lot of people don't realise is, say, for example, if I throw something out, it's got my address and it, someone's come to take it away and just dumps it, then the council are going to come to my door because it's got my address and I'm then responsible. It doesn't matter what someone else says. So is that something that you find happens a lot?
It does happen a lot. But the main thing is that because a company comes and cleans for you and they take your waste away, they then have profit in disposing of it. Yeah, because it then becomes an overhead to them. They have to pay for the processing of it. And then, of course, in the lump sum price that you've got, it's all cost plus and there's a percentage in it and it's all involved in their profit margin. So they're making money getting rid of your waste. Yeah. If we can make it a tenth of the size and then give it back to you, 9 times out of 10, you get rid of the crap anyway. Yeah. So why don't I just give you it back, drop the price. Price is good for you. Yeah. You're securing it's only your waste you're getting rid of. And it's smaller, that you're not putting anything in a landfill. It just makes it better. And we'll go back to a question we had before, is how I got into this and how it all came about was, I used to be a quality manager for an international company called Fleur. And we were building the Google data centre in Eemshaven in Northern Holland during the COVID. Right. And we had some problems there with energy and transport moving around with COVID, etc. But on the back burner, the Germans that were supplying equipment to us also had problems with energy. Yeah. Because during Angela Merkel's reign, what had happened was They dumped the nuclear factor.
Right.
Yeah, because of what happened at Fukushima in Japan and the nuclear power station getting contaminated with water. So the Greens and whatever in Germany dumped that, and so there was a huge power vacuum. They then went to Russia to buy gas and oil.
Right.
Because of the Ukraine crisis, that was cut off. And so it was like, right, let's go green early. And while we in England sat on our backsides and enjoyed the lovely summer, yeah, the Germans were industrious and went out and say, how else can we do these shop blasting jobs?
Yeah.
How can we change this? How can we reduce our reliance on energy? And they moved quite quickly from shop blasting to laser cleaning.
And that's the inspiration for you.
And of course, we were buying things, they were arriving on time, and they were saying, well, you need to come down to see this because it's a new process. You had to go and see the pull-off tests, etc. And so I got involved in it now really early.
Can I just ask you, because I mean, we're talking there, you've spoken quite a lot already about the being environmentally conscious.
Yes.
Clearly, that's something that is important to you, it matters to you.
Oh, it does, it motivates me because I look now, you know, at the whole of industry, and you look at pension companies and they going green. You know, the pension companies won't invest if it's fossil-based, oil-based. How do you get rid of waste? You see companies being split and halved off. That's the dirty part, that's the clean part. And a lot of people just don't realise why these people are breaking these assets up.
Yeah.
You know, and the other thing that frustrates me is that a lot of this new technology, such as lasers, isn't in the education system in the UK.
No, definitely not.
You know, so if it's not in the education system, then how do we get it into industry? You know, that is a problem, because if I go and talk to a managing director or an operations manager and he says, yeah, Terry, yeah, but you're coming in here and we've got no substantiation, nobody underneath you. You know, if we buy the machine, we are totally reliant on you.
Yeah.
They don't have apprentices coming through that they can say, right, you can work under such and such and tell him what you're doing and work with him, and you can come up into the laser inside. Or it's engineering hasn't accepted it at all, really.
That's interesting, because I mean, generally, obviously, we've got, I mean, it's in the news at the minute, we've got this big push towards net zero. Your laser cleaning, from what you're saying, does sound like it can assist with that.
Yes.
And I think from what you've been describing, from your experiences when you're in Holland, it's not just about caring about the planet. It also appears to make sense from a capital point of view, because you're investing in your own technologies. If
you go back in history and you look at the early 90s when the USSR broke up,
right?
Okay, if we go back to there, the laser, laser technology was actually based in sort of Lithuania, Poland, Czechoslovakia.
Right.
Yeah, the former Eastern, they were the leads in it. Yeah, they were the leading party of the USSR in that.
Okay.
Right? So as Russia stepped back, you've got this huge technology in there. Yeah, which is how do they do it? How do they turn it now from a military to a civilian use, etc. So it goes in both directions. Yeah, lasers go into military use, but the other thing that happened was, because of the way the Russia worked, you had people teaching in Russian universities in Moscow, St. Petersburg, who were from Lithuania, from Poland, from Czechoslovakia. They were senior guys in this organisation and this new medium. And so as they seen it progress, it was like they all moved back to their parent country, back to their native country. And so Russia then had a brain drain. You see, so they all come back. So now you've got this well-founded knowledge in there. Meanwhile, you've got the Chinese also working on it. Yeah, so it slides to China, who can actually produce it faster. So again, you've got the technology here with the brains and how it works, but China can reproduce it faster than anybody else.
I'm finding this quite interesting because you and I, we met on a course about AI.
Yes.
We've just had a quick chat about AI and how that's such a big thing in public discourse at the minute.
Yeah.
And now I'm just thinking back, because you're talking about the early 90s.
Yep.
And sort of through 90s to 2000, I was an adult at university. And I don't really, any talk about lasers, and I'm not being flippant, but you were talking about science fiction, you were talking about like sort of laser guns, that's all people really seem to be talking about. So it wasn't, or it didn't really seem to me as though a lot of people, sort of in the broader public, accepting maybe within industry that might not have been the case, but the broader public didn't really seem to be talking very much about laser, perhaps as much as they ought to have been.
Well, they weren't, but the thing is that if you look at lasers for years now, you want to put a level in on a building site, use a laser.
Yeah.
That's happened for the last 10, 15 years, you know.
Yeah.
Now, I spent, sort of 15 years or so in the military. And then when I got out, I went to work with a company repairing bridges. And I was seconded to Russia for 3 years. I worked in Russia from 95 to end of 97. And at the beginning of 98, I came back to the UK, and then I was seconded to Guangzhou, southern China, in 1998. And so you're seeing a lot of these technologies that were being developed being copied, not very well. Yeah? But the thing is, the basics was there.
Yeah.
You know? And as China's developed and things have moved forward, it's a real powerhouse.
Yeah.
Now, I left China in, about 2021.
Right.
You know, I spent 23 years there living.
Wow.
I ended up as an interpreter. I've worked in Outer Mongolia. I've worked all over.
Sorry, did you say you're an interpreter?
Yeah, I'm not
even. You could be just saying anything.
No. This one's not daft. Yeah. No, I worked as an interpreter for quite a few years in factories, because I hadn't come through the graduate system learning about languages as such. I picked it up on the street because I was quite musical, so I had a listening ear.
Right.
And so I got into it. When I first went to China in 1993.
Can I just ask you, just because you mentioned there, you said you weren't particularly academic.
No.
I'm just interested to know what you were like at school, because you said you've come through the paras.
Mm-hmm.
You've just, and I'm going to take you at your word. You're a business owner. Clearly, you're bright enough. You've learned. I'm assuming that's Mandarin Chinese,
yes.
Right? Now, I know that in this country, the education system wanted to adopt Mandarin Chinese, and they just couldn't find the teachers who spoke it.
Yep.
You're clearly a very intelligent guy. You can't not be doing what you've done and achieving what you've achieved. So school wasn't for you. What were you like at school?
I rebelled. Definitely, I wasn't. It wasn't the right. It wasn't the right thing at the right time. I did things a little upside down, you know. I rebelled against school. School was for playing. It was for sports. It was for playing football. It was.
Is that what you enjoyed at school? You a PE
that's what
guy,
I enjoyed. That's what gave me the buzz. And then as you go on and you get out, and I tell you what actually happened during the Falklands conflict in 1982. I had the opportunity to work with prisoners.
Right.
And it was like, we had these guys from university who spoke really good Spanish. They were talking to these prisoners. And I just had this light bulb moment and said, that's what I want to do.
Right.
That is so easy. What a job that is. And there's me walking around with gun in my hand. You know, I'd done a lot of things in life at that stage. And I thought, I want to
Did you join the army straight from school?
I did, yeah.
Right.
And I wanted to be a linguist, and it was like, right, that's what I want to do. If I get this opportunity in life, that's what I'm going to do. So I always pushed it.
Yeah.
You know, I went to Russia. I took up BBC Russian. I'd done that in about a year. I got through the book. I could walk about, do what I want. A lot of people didn't like it then,
right,
because you were undermining interpreters' positions.
Right.
You know, I had a situation in Russia where the job was going slow, and I'm like, that's not what he said to him. I'm sure that's not what he said. I wanted that material here tonight, and he said bring it in the morning. Then it got stuck in the traffic, so we'd lost another day on a job. So it was a case of, why is this? And then you're starting to understand the contracting languages. That man there is paid by the day. The more days he's here,
right,
the better off he's going to be.
So you're able to understand those
we're
incentives.
A contracting company. We want it there, we want it done, we want out. He extended the job by 10, 12 days. Unnecessarily for 8 men, middle of Moscow, high costs. Was like, right, we need to get this sorted. Get the language under your belt and do more of it here on your own. And so that was something that I got hold of again saying to myself, you really need to grab the language. I grabbed the language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this was something that you decided to. You weren't encouraged by any management or anything like that to do? Or?
No. The management don't necessarily encourage you to do that. That's your interpreter's job. That's not your job.
Right.
You know, until you can clearly say, he asked for that, that's what we got. That was what I told him. You know,
it's interesting because like I'm guessing that you didn't obviously have a qualification because you took teaching yourself, and it's amazing how, given what you've just said, the store that we've been putting on qualifications all this time, yet they can be misleading.
Yeah, the thing is though, you've got a cultural difference.
Yes.
And you've got things, the most powerful person in the room is the interpreter. It's not you as the specialist in the job.
No.
You are highly qualified. I'm there to run the job. I know my work A to Z, and I've got to go through an interpreter who interprets through being younger, different language. She interprets through the culture that she was brought up in, which was younger. It was IT, it was AI or whatever. And then she's got to talk, or he's got to talk, to someone senior and show respect. Right? Because she's now talking to a senior engineer. So the situation I was faced with, particularly in China, was, I'm saying, you cannot do that. That's not possible. You do that, we're going to have problems. Yeah. So whatever you do, don't. And I'm listening. He would prefer. He would like you not to do that. Yeah. Instead of just blunt. But she can't tell her boss, no, you can't. Culturally, that young 25-year-old girl with a degree in English, the rest of it, can't tell this 50-year-old guy, no.
Well, that's what he needs to hear.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have accepted that, and he would have been degraded in the room.
Well, just out of interest, given the people in that room, would the interpreter, would they have been considered to be well paid by comparison to the other people in the room? She
was only there because she spoke English. They know what they were doing. And she was just... or he was just something.
Yeah, that, I'm just thinking, just with you saying that often as well, interpreters paid by the day.
Yep.
And it's just really, it just seems like a really short-sighted thing that you've picked up on.
Yeah, but the thing is, an interpreter would be employed for a job.
Yeah.
Not necessarily long term. And then it's a case of, if they did cut the end of the bridge off, knock some concrete out that I'd said should have been retained.
Yeah.
It's like, interpreted wrong, right, they never told me that, gone, new one. Oh my God, all that knowledge I put into that person.
Yeah.
All that education, you know, all them 20 years of doing what I was doing, gone. Now I'm starting with somebody new who's obviously brought in because they're known.
Yeah.
Won't, again, transmit what I want. So it's ignorance, because we the British don't speak second languages very often.
It's an interesting one. I mean, I've actually had someone come on who is basically a languages teacher, and she's set up, and it is quite an interesting one. She's set up because she's obviously a school teacher, decided to go on her own. She wants a bit more time with her family, and she's telling me that the most people that are interested in the services that she's offering are predominantly adults. Yeah. And I think, and I've also had a French lady on who's basically sort of now working. She set up her own business in this country, and we were talking about this, I don't know, reluctance of the English to learn languages, but I'm not entirely sure.
No,
that's
not
fair.
It's not reluctant. It's again, the education system.
Yeah,
doesn't allow you. But the problem is, if you put people in a room that predominantly come out speaking English.
Yeah.
You know, we've got so many migrants here because English is a world dominating language.
Exactly.
But there's more people speak English in China than speak English in England. So why don't they go to China? You know, but that's another subject. But the thing is, English is so widely spoken. Now, there's another aspect to this, which is, if a German person speaks English, they're translating it in their head and using English words.
Yeah.
But it's not coming out quite right. You know? So it is difficult. It's also difficult for Chinese people, etc., who learn English from someone who is with a strong accent.
Yeah.
You know? I've been in classes where I've spoke to people in China. It's like, your teacher came from Liverpool. Yes. Your teacher came from Scotland.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember when I was just travelling, not for work, just basically backpacking around Australia, and I met this German girl who I was absolutely convinced was from Dublin.
Yep.
But she just learnt from a teacher with that accent, and she was so fluent, it was just quite incredible.
Yeah, because that's a problem for students, particularly Chinese, when they come across here. It's a case of whoever their tutor was, that's where they're best tuning into the language. So if they're being taught by somebody from Liverpool, they're best across in Liverpool, you know. But the northeast of England is really famous in the bridge industry, especially Newcastle.
Yeah.
Because you've got a bow bridge, you've got a box girder bridge, you've got a swing bridge, you've got all these different bridges that generate different eras in time, different periods of our industrial past. And so I was here with some Chinese engineers and lads from down south, and it was a case of, right, we're going to go and look at these as an interest thing after they had been round some British factories to look at certain things. And I want to go for Chinese meals. We've got to Stell Street. So he goes up the hill into Stell Street, absolutely shattered, warm day. I said, I want a beer. So this Chinese guy walks towards us in this Stell Street restaurant. I said, wait, we want to order the beer and then we'll do the food. I didn't speak Chinese, but my dad is. Oh, no! I don't believe it! And so everybody in the table's laughing. It's like, oh, man, in Newcastle. But that's just life, you know. But again, you know, you relax your environment, you speak your local language. That's it. Yeah,
it's that's fascinating. So, I mean, to bring this back to your business, then we can see you've got that industrial, you've got that engineering background, and you've actually been back in this country a relatively short period of time.
Yes,
and again, you said to me off camera, you were the last flight from New Zealand.
Yes,
after sort of following COVID.
Yes.
So, what were you doing in New Zealand?
I went to see an old army friend.
Right. Simple as that.
That was it. He moved to Australia. We've always been in touch when he's come to the UK. He's always had the decency to look me up and my family, you know, even if I've not been here and I've been working away. So we decided, because I was between jobs, we'd go to New Zealand and see him. You know, I was like, yeah, we'll go. So we've been out that way a few times, New Zealand, Tasmania and Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and enjoyed it. Nice.
Fantastic. So you're back in this country 2021. Yeah. What happened then for you?
I was on a boat coming out of Rotterdam on the ferry, and I'm upstairs at the back of the boat, back of the ferry, just sitting with a beer saying, I'll retire. I'll pack my bags. That's it. That's me finished. And I've got an estate car downstairs full of my Dutch house sort of thing. And the phone rings. Terry, where are you? I'm on the ferry coming back to the UK. How long are you going to be here? Forever. Do you want a job? I don't believe it. You're joking. This is a wind up. No. I'm looking for a Chinese interpreter. Don't believe you. Yeah. So I ended up interpreting for a Northeast company who had Chinese engineers coming across to put a machine together. So it was like, yeah, I'll come do that. So that was 3 weeks, 4 weeks of engineering in a factory, putting a big machine together.
Yeah.
You know, just kicking that off, and that was it, great. You know, and that started me back into industry. And so I moved on from there, and it was a case of, right, I need to do something. My head's too busy. I couldn't retire. I couldn't sit down and play golf.
I was just going to say, when you said, I'm going to retire, and I've had this conversation a few times on this podcast, you don't strike me as the kind of guy that's going to retire.
I can't, my head's too busy.
Yeah.
You know, I can see so much opportunity in the Northeast, and people say, oh, well, where? And the thing is, it's in development. It's having it's okay for me. I'm about to retire. I'm okay. I'm all set up. But I've struck out, and I'm a trailblazer now, you know. You're using laser cleaner. You're one of the first in the Northeast. But we've been out 3 years, and we don't necessarily have work every day, you know.
Yeah.
It's just keep going, you know. We do lots of things. We've diversified out of engineering. We've gone into civils. So now next year, the year after, we'll split the company into two. We're civil engineering and mechanical engineering. You know, we do simple things like take all the paint off bolt heads so they can get the socket on.
Yeah.
You know, in port locations where the paint is so thick to stop the the corrosion. We just laser it off. Done. You now put the socket on. To go in and taking old stains off drive so people can sell houses without the price being knocked down for to do a new drive. You know, there's lots of ways of going forward with lasers.
So why did you choose? Is this just based on your background? You saw an opportunity, and you thought, that's what I'm going to do.
I seen it working in Holland, and I thought, wow, this is really something. You know, when I get back to the UK and I'm in factories working as an interpreter, and I'm looking at it, I'm saying, these factories are about the same as when I left. They've not moved forward with much technology, but
just out of curiosity, because we've talked about the education system, and I think most people seem to agree doesn't seem to have moved on very far. You're telling me now, and this is something I don't know, because I've not worked in. I mean, I have worked in factories, but not like you have. And you're saying that there's not a huge change there. Is that a UK problem?
I'll tell you where that came from, because my job for about 16 years in China was what they called SQS, which is supplier quality surveillance.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to build a small diesel power station for the power, say a gold mine or a coal mine out in the middle of nowhere, we look at various people to build it.
Yeah.
You know, and I would go out and vet that builder. You know, and you'd go out and you'd see the workshops, you'd look at what they were doing and say, yeah. And you'd go into Chinese factories where they were building marine engines. You know, it's like, wow, that's something else. And I went into one Chinese factory that was building what we call shakers.
Yeah.
Where if you've got coal, it simply vibrates and the different size coal comes off at different levels. And they had a factory where they had no more than 2 degrees difference between one end of the factory and the other.
Right.
And so the steel came in, it acclimatised to the factory, then it went all the way through the workshops and out the other side, and only 2 degrees of change. It sat in the factory for something like 10 days before it could be used.
Yeah.
So it could acclimatise. There was wooden boards between each one. And I go into UK factories and I'm like, they're not as advanced as this. You know, so I've got something to compare it to.
Yeah.
The problem is that when people are in a factory for 28 years, you know, or for the whole of the span of their life, they don't necessarily see changes coming in.
No.
You know, and that's why the other side of the equation is people who go into a factory in 3 or 4 years can't deposit their knowledge.
I think it's an interesting thing that actually, because when people talk about experience, and it's your experience, your life has had sort of very clear changes, very clear sections to it, that you've then been able to take and bring that in. So like sort of obviously we
term it as technology transfer.
Yeah.
So I go into one Chinese factory and I see something, but they won't allow me to take photographs.
Yeah.
You know, because that's their USP. That's fine. You go into another factory and say, that other factory's got it.
Yeah.
But why have they got it? They just have.
Yeah. But then you can transfer that, and that's something about experience. And it's interesting when people say, if they've maybe worked in a job for 20 or 30 years, that's not necessarily 20 or 30 years experience if they've just been doing the same thing year on year.
I don't look at that in the same way when somebody says, I've been there 20 years, you know, in the same way as I did when I left.
Yeah.
I now look at that as, right, what technology changes?
Yeah.
You know, it's like now with this ESG and CSR accreditation for the environment.
Can you just tell me what they stand for?
Corporate and social responsibility is the big one. Yeah, and so you're looking there at how your welfare is, how much energy you use in the factory, how you process your waste, the whole your supply chain, the whole thing's in there. And so what I look at is like, how many changes have you actually effected in the factory to gain your accreditation, to start and move up the ladder?
Is it hard to gain?
No, it's not difficult to gain. No, because you can gain it and start at the bottom level. And then you know where you are and you can move up.
Right.
You know, so it's not a difficult thing to gain. What you really got to do is change the way you work, you know, to move up the ladder. And that is like, people go for the low-hanging fruit. We've put LED lights in.
Yeah.
We now save the water that comes off the roof. It's processed and it goes into the toilets. You know, we've opened this up to let more light in, you know, and we've give people ergonomic chairs and desks and the rest of it. And it's like, right, what have you done in the factory? What new technology have you brought in? You know, and you go into factories and you say, right, how much PPE did you buy last year? Personal protective equipment. Look at the cost of that, 50 grand. You're using that because that's required for this service, wherever you might do. Why not change the service and get rid of the need for ever needing to put personal protective equipment in place? You know, and get rid of the bill, because
which makes an awful lot of sense.
It makes an awful lot of sense, but you should be looking at the technology and seeing how you can change things and move forward, reduce the amount of waste that you actually create, reduce the amount of energy that actually use. People have gone for the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
You know, but shortly the government will be catching up, and Mr. Miliband will be saying, "Why? Why are we still doing this in this era?" Years ago, I was in the north of China, around by Beijing.
So, just with regard to that, do you think that companies need to be much more incentivised to kind of guide that direction?
Incentivised? Well, whichever way you do it, there's got to be a path forward, you know.
Yeah.
But people should be doing it of their own volition. It should be a It should be a USP. It should be something that is planned and futurising your company.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be, oh, we need to do this. You should be futurising your company every day, making sure you stay there. You know, and instead of waiting until the big hammer comes down.
Yeah.
You know, and it adds value to your company.
Not everyone does, though, do they?
Everybody doesn't. Not everybody does. It's just the way it is. But I go back to something I started there years ago. I was in I was in an office in Beijing, and it was a case of we were working for it was an Australian mining company at the time, and they wanted these panels. These panels were bitumen coated because of what came off the process, and the bitumen panels were sprayed bitumen. And so we put it into this company, and they says, "Yeah, we can do that job. 95%." You know, 5% we want to farm out, blah, blah. Nobody followed with this 5%. The 5% was these bitumen spray panels. So it goes, right, why are these not ready? Why should we make them in China when it's illegal to make them in Australia? Floored me. I'm English.
Yeah.
And I'm like, goes back on the phone. Yeah, we can't make them here. Well, why can you install them and use them if it's illegal to make them? You know, you can import them. Well, all you've done is sent your dirty work to China.
It's fascinating, though, isn't it? Because I think that's another thing that people haven't really sort of grasped, how much more global we are, and whether that's down to the internet, whether that's down to people like yourself just going over and working elsewhere. But people don't seem to think about stuff like that.
Oh, no. You see, the Chinese look at it very differently.
Yeah.
What they'll say is that, yes, we produced all these tons of CO2, and out of that, 55% was for export, it was yours. Fair one.
Yeah.
If you'd made that in Britain with the processes you had,
it
would be dirtier than ours because our factories are cleaner than yours.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I've looked at your factory. Yeah, it is. It's absolutely nip and clean. You know, so until a lot of people will watch this and say, well, he's pro-Chinese, he's pro-Chinese. But the thing is, I'm talking about what I've seen, what I've done, where I've been. I'm not using the media and propaganda. I've seen some absolutely terrific factories.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I don't think you're any sort of Chinese spy, sorry. But I mean, everyone forms their opinions based on their experience and what they've seen.
Yes.
And it's that thing when we are. I mean, I'm not one of these people that thinks net zero is something that we should just ditch. I'm not one of these people that thinks we shouldn't care about the planet. And from speaking to you, you clearly care about that as well.
Yeah.
But it's like, why people can't sort of join the dots and approach it on a global level. And as you say, it's like, it's pointless us being net zero if we're just farming out our.
The thing is, if you look at the size of Britain,
yeah,
as a company, as a country, we produce very little compared to others.
Yeah.
And yet people want to make us a global leader. Wow. You know, that's a tough ask.
Yeah.
That is a real tough ask.
Is it possible, in your view?
everybody can be a global leader in something.
Yeah.
You know, not necessarily the whole package. In part of the package, as the world of industry, we will get the whole package. But somebody's got to be a leader in something.
Yeah.
You know, and we've just got to find out what we do best.
Absolutely. I think what's interesting as well, and I was chatting to my wife about this morning, I think that's where schools need to refocus. Rather than making everyone aspire to be brilliant at English and maths and history and geography, your MFL teacher didn't manage that with you. I mean, to go away and learn Chinese the way that you did is a phenomenal achievement. And I think, and you must know that with your anecdote about when you're in Stowell Street, and when you're dropping your Chinese here, and it's impressive, and you know it is, and you know, and you're proud of it, and quite rightly so. You should be proud of it. But I just wonder, as a country, why we couldn't have picked up on your ability to do that, because if you can speak, what languages can you speak?
I speak some Russian, I speak Chinese.
My mother, funnily enough, my mother did Russian A level, and she, you know, my mum's actually probably academically cleverer than I am, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But she found Russian incredibly hard. Really.
Well, I found it really easy with the Geordie accent, to be honest. Because some of the harsher sounds were quite good.
Yeah, I mean, interesting perspective. But it's just a thought. I mean, how many more languages could you speak? Had someone caught you early when, according to my linguist friend, it's much easier to learn a language when you're, I think it's about sort of 7 is the ideal time.
It is.
I'm just wondering.
And you know what it comes down to? My opinion, it comes down to, as you get older, you get more confident and you become more worried about what other people think. Whereas when you're 7, 8, up to sort of 10, it's still play and you're having a laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I really learned Chinese when I was in Guangzhou. And a lot of the people in Guangzhou obviously speak Cantonese because it's very close to Hong Kong.
Right.
But my Chinese come on really well because as we finished Guangzhou Inner Ring Road, which is a 23 kilometres of elevated road in the middle of a city, and they built it in 18 months.
Right.
Unbelievable. And so we worked days and nights in this job just to keep up with the contractor. But I ended up working night shift to tie the last pieces in. And I was finishing work at sort of 2:30 in the morning. And I would go to the pub. One pub in the middle of Guangzhou, go to the pub, the Elephant and Castle. And I'd sit there, have a breakfast, couple of beers, go to bed, go to the office at lunchtime, and then start work again. And while I was there, it was the biggest learning curve I had ever had in my life. Because I would listen to words outside on the street and I'd hear snippets of it. What does that mean? What does that mean? Write it down.
Yeah.
And really got involved in it one-to-one, you know. And that was another stage on from putting stickers on doors, put a sticker on the fridge, put a sticker on the eggs, put a sticker on this, and you learn it in 2 languages. You learn Pinyin, you know, and you learn it in English. You clarify it in English with your little sticker. And that was the place, you know, late at night, those hours, working with the lads out on the site, into the bar, relaxed, they'd write something down. How do I say that? How do I say that? Say that again. And it was great because the bar staff had time. I had one-on-one, I had a couple of beers. It was like great. And that relaxed atmosphere, you know, actually did it for me.
Yeah.
Out of school, out of being... Because as you're older, you really need more one-on-one, or I would call it a secure group.
Yes.
You know? But the other thing about trying to learn a language, when I first went to Guangzhou, I went to evening classes.
Right.
And it was a waste of time.
Interesting.
Because my head was full of broken toys. It was like, going into class.
Yeah.
I haven't finished that. I haven't done that. When I finish this, I'll have to go back to the office and do that. Your head wasn't in it.
No.
And that's the problem when you try and do a lot of this late night learning. Your head's not in it. And so the year before I went to China, I spent a lot of time with cassettes in the car.
Right.
By myself, driving around, sat in traffic jams, people are looking at you, and you're talking away, but you're learning it by yourself. And the problem with that is the mistakes you make, you embed into your language.
Yes.
You've got to have that face with someone to stop that happening. But what was agreed was, before I went to China, because originally I did only go for 1 year and stayed 23, it was a case of, before I go...
1 year and stayed 23?
I want a language course.
Yeah.
And I want to go with somebody professional who speaks Chinese. And we found this great tutor in Newcastle, in New Durham, called Caroline Mason, Make Highland, called her. And so I had 6 to 10 weeks with her, on and off, and then with some students at Durham University. And then when I went to China, I was ready for it. You know, an intensive course just before I went, great. And that set me up. You know, but it's something you've just, and that's the problem in industry. You know, if you're paying somebody to learn a language to go and take a factory on in China or Poland or wherever, will they leave? Will another company say, "Oh, they've got somebody who speaks the local language"? We'll nab that one. Yeah. Because as soon as my time was up in China with the company I went with, there was another company knocking on the door. "Terry, you come work for us?" Yeah, I'll come now. So I ended up going from Nanjing to Guangzhou to Chengdu, just bump, 3 years, 4 years. That was it.
It does make quite a difference, doesn't it? If you've got that additional skill on top of being able to do what you do.
Oh, it's huge. It's huge, you know, because in those days, especially in like Guangzhou, somebody thinks, great, I've got a name card for my hotel. They get into the taxi, show the name card to the driver. Oh, Holiday Inn. There's about 10 Holiday Inns in Guangzhou. Yeah. This is not where I live. This is not where I live. This is not where I live. They come back to the pub and say, "I'll get Terry to put you in the car." And so I ended up very much being the doorman in the pub, because I knew all the hotels and whatever from just experience. And going around, and spending a lot of time going around the city, building the ring road, so I knew roughly where I was when I say in the card. And for the last year I was in Guangzhou, I actually worked for the British consulate part-time. Right. So I was the consulate guy for non-consular activities. So, you know, people get stuck and things happen and say, "That's not our job, Terence, you go down, just try and sort it out for us." So you'd go down and find out what was going on, you know, as a non-consular person. So it was quite good. Do
you know what's striking me about this? I'm not a big fan of when people use the term common sense, because frankly, you can ask 50 people what common sense means and you get 50 answers. Mm-hmm. But listening to you, I think you're almost unintentionally providing a great definition of common sense, because what they're asking you to do, it's stuff that maybe isn't as obvious. It's just that sort of that sort of knowledge that you've acquired.
It is. It is, and that comes very much from my military background, has always been on the move. Yeah. And picking up on nuances and things. Yeah. You know, and it's just the way it is, you know.
But I think people might assume that that's common sense, where it's actually not. It's actually, as you've just said, it's come from an awful lot of life experience, and experience in the truest sense of like the different stuff you've done.
Yeah, because you're there. I'll give you an instance. Working in Guangzhou, I had an Ericsson 910 or something. It was like a little small house brick phone. And this guy says, "If I get any trouble, can I give you a ring?" I said, "Yeah, just give me a ring, mate. No problem. Give him a number." Yeah. Right. And I'm trying to put his number in my phone, and it won't go in. I said, "What's up with this? What's up with this?" And we had some guys from Newcastle in the pub, and they were putting in the Ericsson ground network. And they were all electricians, formerly worked at the yard, got laid off. One of them got into Ericsson's. Next thing, all the Geordies were in Guangzhou, putting the Ericsson network in. So he says, "Terry, your phone will only take 99 addresses." "Oh, right. Oh, okay." So I've got to delete somebody, you know. A ringly deleting numbers. I don't know. He's gone. And I went down to something like 23 numbers from 99, all from people who'd come in and gone out. Yeah. You know, and that's the thing. I'd been in Guangzhou by that time, sort of like 2-3 years. You know, yes, you deleted the odd one, but it's the intransience. Yeah. People coming in, parachuted in, do a job, get out. You know, and it costs companies a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, because people are coming in and you're talking to them and you're trying to put your experience in them. Never told me that. Never told me I need to do that. No, you've got to be out the country tomorrow because that's a 30-day visa.
Yeah.
But I was to read it. Don't just read the thing. You know, don't just expect to, when you go for a visa, expect to be able to stay.
Yeah.
You know, we had a guy, because I'd gone to Durham University for these like 4 or 5 days I was there. I got on really well with people, and somebody come back to me and said, Terance, we've had a student had a breakdown. Yeah. And I'm in China by this time. Can you find him for us? What? Well, he's a Chinese student. He's an English student. He's failed wherever exam it was. And he's disappeared, and he's somewhere in China or Hong Kong.
Can you find him?
I'm like, yeah, okay, then, mate, yeah, I'll try and do that for you. What's his name? Right, what does he look like? Okay, I'll leave it with us. Yeah, I'll do my best. So then it's like, what they did tell me was, every 5 or 6 weeks we get a postcard off him. He's got a 30-day visa.
Yeah.
He's flitting in and out. So he's somewhere in Guangdong province because he goes to Hong Kong, gets the bus down, night in Hong Kong, turns around, comes out, 30 days starts again. He's in the education system, that's his thing, so he's going to be a teacher. Just put simple things together.
Yeah.
So he's going to teach English as a second language. Right. Just got the student hangout. Hey, have you seen such... No, he's not done. Oh, a funny fella in mind. Is he? All right. Oh, well, I was with... And then, of course, I was with him at Durham University. If you see him, tell him, give him a drink. Yeah. So anyway, he comes down, he works in a bar now and again on a weekend when they want people. So I finds out which school he goes to, everything, and I phones him in the UK. I found him. What? I found him. This is the school he's teaching at. This is where you need to go. Yeah. And he works these days. Because I phoned a few days and said, is he in today? No, he doesn't work Mondays. He works Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Oh, okay, I'll phone him more. Who is it? Oh, just tell him it's Terry. And then left it, you know, and then his family came out, picked him up.
Job done.
Fantastic. But, you know, it's learning the traits
yeah,
of where you are and what's going on around you, keeping your ears open. And
which not everyone does,
no,
to be fair.
Your own personal security,
yeah,
you know, is a huge thing when you live abroad.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't pay enough attention to it.
No, that's true. If we can go back to when you're back in this country, you've had opportunities come up, and you obviously you care a lot about what you do. So, what was the startup process? Did you just have to go buy the machine? Is it a big barrier to entry? It seems like you've got quite a lot of knowledge that you've acquired.
Oh, there's no barriers to entry. Anybody will take your money off. No, I did my research and I had knowledge of machines.
Yeah.
From what I'd done, and so I ended up going with one of the manufacturers that I knew that provided a sound machine. But I ended up going to Germany and Lithuania, Poland, and having a look at them, going to the factory, see how they were built. I'd seen them operate, but I wanted to see how they were built, what sort of people built them, what the backup was. And that was going back to my own background of supplier quality surveillance, making sure everything was right.
That's a really deep level of research, isn't it?
Oh, and these people are saying, but you're only buying, it's only so many. I'm like, no, this is an asset I'm buying.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got to go and do these things to make sure it works.
Yeah.
You know, so that was what I did. It's just down to the finer details, you know.
Right.
And that's what you've got to do, drill down.
Yeah. And that's, obviously, that's something that I presume sets you apart from. I mean, having said that, have you got any competition?
Yeah, we've got competition in the North East. Yeah. Right. We've got a lot of people come up from down south with huge machines.
Yeah.
You know, the one we have, we've got two now. One uses the power of a kettle.
Right.
You know, and it takes a lot of rust off, takes all your dirty marks off, take your graffiti off. And the other one works with the power of a vacuum cleaner, 1500 watt. But the thing is, it's focused in one place.
Yeah.
It's doing what you want to do, where you want to do it, cleaning-wise. Whereas if you buy a big machine, people say, oh, this one's 3,000, this one's 4,000. It gets more dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, and what you're going to do with it. You know, it's the health and safety when you get them sort of machines starts to become very serious.
So what's the future look like for you then?
The future?
So you've mentioned retirement already. And you've decided, I can't see you as a retiring type.
No.
In the traditional
2-3 years, I'll probably think about it. So, you know, and that'll take me to 70.
Right. Wow.
You know, I'm 67 now, so that'll probably take me to 70, and then move on. Yeah. Wow.
And any advice that you would give to? Because I mean, you've led, I think, what most people would admit is quite an incredible life. What advice would you give to any aspiring entrepreneurs?
Learn a language.
Served you well.
Learn a language. Don't play about with it. Actually go learn with it. And the easiest way to do it is to, you know, just immerse yourself in it.
Yeah.
You know, really immerse yourself into a language. Don't just try and do half a dozen things at one time. When you're older, it takes all of your time and effort to get it under your belt, and then if you flit in and out of it, you'll go nowhere. You'll never finish the job.
Yeah,
you've really got to immerse yourself in it to get the job done.
So focus. To
focus, because as you get older, there's so many other things in life that you've got to get on with.
Yeah,
it just makes learning that little bit more difficult.
I think it's a fascinating turn that this discussion's taken. And this is what I love about it. I mean, I was chatting to someone that's got a laser cleaning company. Mm-hmm. I never thought to get so much insight on education.
Yeah, well, it's difficult though. You know, education's by central government. The academies apparently are going to disappear, and people are going to become more focused in certain things. I honestly see a real position now for private school and Saturdays, Sundays.
Yeah. To
do specialist subjects or languages, or whatever it might be. For the entrepreneur that wants to move out on their own, because it's so diverse. And the thing is, people can say, well, we've got Chinese people or Russian people come here speak the language.
Yeah.
Yes, but they're not your culture.
No.
I've been in a number of meetings where people have said, well, we've had the company for nearly 100 years. These people go with state-owned enterprise around them.
Yeah.
These companies, the Chinese state's been around for years. Yeah, but you haven't had a private business owner for that long.
Yeah.
You know, and these family have given everything to it. You know, they've lived it. You know, and that's the bit that people don't get. I once was going back on a plane, KLM flight out in Newcastle, and sat next to a guy. Oh, what are you doing? Oh, I'm going to China. Oh, which flight are you on? Yeah, oh, all right, mate. So we've got the journey together. We'll strike up a friendship for the trip. I said, what do you do? He says, I buy companies. I buy companies that's going bust. I buy family companies that's going under. I've got about 30. What? He says, oh, well, he's retiring. He sold his company. But he doesn't realise how much that company name is worth. Because he's been around since 1905, 1923, la, la, la. He was going off and selling them to foreign companies. The name, the rights, everything.
Yeah.
He bought them for pittance. And he was selling them to foreign companies who are now partnering with that company in the UK. They were doing all sorts. And he was making money out of just selling that longevity.
Fantastic. Amazing. It is. All these ideas coming from substantial experience. Terry, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
Thank you very much.
Really interesting conversation.
Appreciate it.
And I recommend everyone watch this podcast. So thank you very much.
Well, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye now.